Now, part of what's unique about climate change, though, is the nature of some of the opposition to action. It's pretty rare to be able to counter somebody who says the problem you're trying to solve simply doesn't exist. When President Kennedy set us on a course for the moon, there were a number of people who made a serious case that it wouldn't be worth it, it was going to be too expensive, it was going to be too hard, it would take too long, but nobody ignored the science. I don't remember anybody saying that the moon wasn't there or that it was made of cheese. Today's Congress, though, is full of folks who stubbornly and automatically reject the scientific evidence about climate change. They will tell you it is a hoax or a fad. One member of Congress actually says the world is cooling. There was one member of Congress who mentioned a theory involving dinosaur flatulence, which I won't get into. Now, their view may be wrong, and a fairly serious threat to everybody's future, but at least they have the brass to say what they actually think. There's some who also duck the question. They say, when they're asked about climate change, they say, hey, look, I'm not a scientist. And I'll translate that for you. What that really means is, I know that man-made climate change really is happening, but if I admit it, I'll be run out of town by a radical Frenchman who thinks climate science is a literal plot. So I'm not a scientist either, but we've got some really good ones at NASA. I do know that the overwhelming majority of scientists who work on climate change, including some who once disputed the data, have put that debate to rest. The writer Thomas Friedman recently put it to me this way. We were talking, he says, your kid is sick. You consult 100 doctors. 97 of them tell you to do this. 3 tell you to do that. And you want to go with the 3? The fact is, this should not be a partisan issue. After all, it was Republicans who used to lead the way on new ideas to protect our environment. It was Teddy Roosevelt who first pushed for our magnificent national funds. It was Richard Nixon who signed the Clean Air Act and opened the EPA. George H.W. Bush, a wonderful man who at 90 just jumped out of a plane in a parachute, said that human activities are changing the atmosphere in unexpected and unprecedented ways. John McCain and other Republicans publicly supported free market-based cap and trade bills to slow carbon pollution just a few years ago, before the Tea Party decided there was a massive threat to freedom and liberty. These days, unfortunately, nothing's happening. Even minor energy efficiency bills are killed on the Senate floor. And the reason is because people are thinking about politics instead of thinking about what's good for the next generation. What's the point of public office if you're not going to use your power to help solve problems? And part of the challenge is that the media doesn't spend a lot of time covering climate change and letting average Americans know how it could impact their futures. Now, the broadcast networks' nightly newscasts spend just a few minutes a month covering climate issues. On cable, the debate's usually between political pundits, not scientists. When we introduced those new anti-pollution standards a couple weeks ago, the instant reaction from Washington's political press wasn't about what it would mean for our planet. It was what would it mean for an election 6 months from now. And that kind of misses the point. Of course, they're not scientists either. I want to tell you all this not to discourage you. I'm telling you all this because I want to light a fire under you. As the generation getting shortchanged by inaction on this issue, I want all of you to understand that you cannot accept that this is the way it has to be. Climate change deniers suggest there's still a debate over the science. There is not. Talking heads on cable who suggest public opinion is hopelessly deadlocked. It is not. 7 in 10 Americans say global warming is a serious problem. 7 in 10 say the federal government should limit pollution from our power plants. And all the issues in the recent poll asking Americans where we think we can make a difference, protecting the environment came out on top. So we have public opinion potentially on our side. We can do this. We can make a difference. You can make a difference. And the sooner you do, the better. Not just for our climate, but for our economy. There's a reason that more than 700 businesses like Apple and Microsoft, GM, Nike, Intel, Starbucks have declared that tackling climate change is one of America's greatest economic opportunities in the 21st century. The country that seizes this opportunity first will lead the way. A low-carbon, clean energy economy can be an engine for growth and jobs for decades to come. I want America to build that engine because if we do, others will follow. I want those jobs, I want those opportunities, I want those businesses right here in the United States of America. Developing countries are using more and more energy, and tens of millions of people are entering the global middle class, and they want to buy cars and refrigerators. So if we don't deal with this problem soon, we're going to be overwhelmed. These nations have some of the fastest rising levels of carbon pollution. They're going to have to take action to meet this challenge. They're more vulnerable to the effects of climate change than we are. They've got even more to lose, but they're waiting to see what does America do. That's what the world does. It waits to watch us act. And when we do, they move. And I'm convinced that on this issue, when America proves what's possible, then they're going to join us. And America cannot meet this threat alone. Of course, the world cannot meet it without America. This is a fight that America must lead. I'm going to keep doing my part for as long as I hold this office, as long as I'm a citizen who holds that office. But we're going to need you, the next generation, to finish the job. We need scientists to design new fuels. We need farmers to help grow. We need engineers to invent new technologies. We need entrepreneurs to sell those technologies. We need workers to operate assembly lines that come with high-tech, zero-carbon components. We need builders to hammer into place the foundations for a clean energy age. We need diplomats and businessmen and women and Peace Corps volunteers to help developing nations skip past the dirty phase of development and transition to sustainable sources of energy. In other words, we need you. We need you. If you believe, like I do, that something has to be done on this, then you're going to have to speak out. You're going to have to learn more about these issues. You're going to have to, even if you're not like us, an expert, you're going to have to work on this. You're going to have to push those of us in power to do what this American moment demands. You've got to educate your classmates and colleagues and family members and fellow citizens and tell them what's at stake. You've got to push back against the misinformation and speak out for facts and organize others around your vision for the future. You need to invest in what helps. Invest in what harms. We've got to remind everyone who represents you at every level of government that doing something about climate change is a prerequisite for your vote. Now, it's no accident when President Kennedy needed to convince the nation that sending Americans into space was a worthy goal. He went to a university. That's where he started. This challenge is big as that, as costly as that, as difficult as that, requires a spirit of youth. Requires a spirit of adventure, a willingness to take risks, requires optimism, requires hope. That day a man told us we'd go to the moon within a decade. And despite all the naysayers, somehow we knew as a nation we build a spaceship to meet that goal. That's because we're Americans, and that's what we do. Even when our political system is consumed by small things, we are a people close to big things. Progress on climate change is a big thing. Progress will always be flashy. It'll be measured in disasters averted, and lives saved, the planet preserved, and days just like this one, 20 years from now, 50 years from now, 100 years from now. Can you imagine a more worthy goal, a more worthy legacy of protecting the world in the So I ask your generation to help lead us that way. I ask you to believe in yourselves and one another. Above all, when life gets you down or somebody tells you you can't do something, believe in something better. There are people here who know what it means to dream. When Muhammad Ali was born, the suffering he saw in refugee camps in Lebanon didn't drive him into despair. It inspired him to become a doctor. And when he came to America, he discovered a passion for engineering. So here at UC Irvine, he became a biomedical engineer studying human brain. Muhammad said, I had never come to the United States. And I never come to the United States until I never had the ability to do the work that I'm doing. He's now going to Caltech to keep doing that work. Cynthia Flores is the daughter of a single mom who worked as a seamstress and a housekeeper. The first in her family to graduate from high school. The first in her family to graduate from college. And in college she says, I learned about myself. I was good at advocating for others. And I was that argumentative. So maybe I should go to law school. And today Cynthia is the first in her family to graduate from law school. She plans to advocate for the rights of workers like her own. She says, I have a great privilege and opportunity to answer the call of my community. The bottom line, she says, is big and simple. On 9/11, Aaron Anderson was a sophomore in college. Several months later, he was in training for Army Special Forces. He fought in Afghanistan on February 28, 2006. He was nearly killed by an IED. He endured dozens of surgeries to save months of recovery of Walter Reed. When he couldn't physically return to active duty, he devoted his time to his brothers in arms, starting 2 businesses with fellow veterans and a foundation to help fellow wounded Green Beret soldiers. Then he went back to school. Last December, he graduated summa cum laude from UC Irvine. Aaron is here today along with 4 soon-to-be ROTC cadets and 65 other graduating veterans. Now we ask them to stand and be recognized for their service. The point is, you know how to dream. You know how to work for your dreams. And yes, sometimes you may be super underrated. But you know, usually it's the underrated, the underdogs, the dreamers, the idealists, the fighters, the argumentative. Those are the folks who do the biggest things. This generation, this 9/11 generation of soldiers, this new generation of scientists, advocates, and entrepreneurs, altruists, you're the antidote to cynicism. Doesn't mean you're not going to get down sometimes. You will. You'll know disillusionment. You'll experience doubt. People will disappoint you by their actions. That can discourage you. Cynicism has never won a war or cured a disease or started a business or fed a young mind. Set men into space. Cynicism is a choice. Hope is a better choice. Hope is what gave young soldiers the courage to storm a beach and liberate people they never met. Hope is what gave young students the strength to sit in and stand up and march for women's rights and civil rights and voting rights and gay rights and immigration rights. Hope is the belief against all evidence to the contrary that there are better days ahead and that together we can build up a middle class, reshape our immigration system, and shield our children from gun violence, and shelter future generations from the ravages of climate change. Hope is the fact that today, the single largest age group in America is 22-year-olds who are all just issues to reshape this country and reshape the world, and I can